Are Trackhouse and Chevrolet the biggest beneficiary of the new car? All that and more coming up next. What's going on, everybody? If I haven't earned your subscription, hopefully today is the day that I will earn that subscription. On the Fox broadcast, Jeff Gordon brought up the fact that Chevrolet is working together in an unprecedented manner, and this is why the Chevrolet cars are running well, and in particular that Trackhouse team has really made significant gains from where they were at last year. Last year, of course, it was the single car team with Daniel Suarez, and he had sort of a so-so up and down year. There were bright moments, but for the most part, that car sort of ran toward the back. Now, you also have to factor in that this team is essentially the Chip Ganassi team. Now, we saw at the end of the season, Chip Ganassi with Ross Chastain and Kurt Busch, they ran extremely well. They were trying to go out with a bang, so you also have to factor that in. But I think the performance so far this season is well above what either one of those teams achieved last year. And I think that performance is directly attributed to, one, the RCR alliance by itself, but two, this unprecedented Chevrolet alliance that Jeff Gordon alluded to, sort of just dropped a bomb on everybody when he said that. I think that particular alliance is making Trackhouse even better than they were. I think they have equipment and just access to stuff that this team has never had before, and I think that they're absolutely making the most of it. Both of those drivers are getting finishes well above anything that they have done in the past. Ross Chastain looks like he is an absolute contender, not only to win, but he could be a contender for the championship if he keeps running the way that he is running. And Daniel Suarez is starting to show flashes of what made him a blue chip prospect when he was driving for Toyota and Stewart-Haas Racing coming out of the Xfinity Series where he won the championship. Now, that being said, should other manufacturers take a look at what Chevrolet's doing and try to emulate it? Let's start off with Ford. Ford actually has a pretty tight alliance, but there have been rumblings, particularly from Tony Stewart at Stewart-Haas, that he doesn't feel like he is getting some of the exact same equipment that the Penske and Roush Fenway guys are getting. He feels like Penske, Roush Fenway, and the Wood brothers have a tighter alliance with Ford than maybe Stewart-Haas Racing does. Now, there are several reasons this could be. Is this something that Ford did because they think that Stewart-Haas is potentially thinking about moving to another manufacturer down the road? Obviously, they have several years left on that contract with Ford. 2024, I think, would be the soonest that they could make some type of switch. Or is it just a case of Ford only has so much equipment or whatever to go around, and they have chosen to go with Penske and Roush Fenway Keselowski and the Wood brothers because, you know, Roush Fenway Keselowski is the group that basically builds the engine. You know, Roush Yates Engines, that comes from Roush Fenway Keselowski, and Penske. I guess they're just going with Penske because they picked Penske over Stewart-Haas, if this is true. Of course, once again, this is just conjecture. But would they benefit from bringing all those teams in? Because there are some downsides to it, but we'll get to that after I talk about Toyota. Toyota is a tricky one because they only have 6 teams, and you would think that all 6 of those teams would be unified and in agreement and an alliance, but you have seen throughout the years of Toyota that they have had other teams, and those teams have all varied differently on what they run, even though they all get TRD horsepower from California. You've seen one team, let's just take Joe Gibbs out of it, they always run good. You've seen one team that was aligned with Toyota and Furniture Row and Joe Gibbs, the Furniture Row team, where they ran really well, they won a championship, and then Joe Gibbs jacked up the price on them because he didn't like getting beat with his own equipment, essentially. And then you saw another guy who had a much looser alliance in Levine Family Racing, where they never really showed any type of results anywhere near what the Gibbs guys were doing, aside from one race with Matt DiBenedetto where he ran, I guess, good, or ran well at Bristol. That might even have been in the Chevrolet, I'm not sure. But basically, you only saw that team run well one time. So it begs the question, is 2311 as tightly aligned as Furniture Row was with Gibbs? I think they are, but I think you also look at them and you've seen they've been just a step or two behind the Gibbs cars. Yes, I know Kurt Busch is getting top 5 finishes with it, but Kurt Busch is an elite driver, probably one of the best that will ever do it. So you can't take what he's doing and compare it to anything else, because even when he was down equipment-wise at Ganassi, which we know because when Kyle Larson went to Hendrick, you saw him win just a bunch of races. You would imagine if you put Kurt Busch in a Hendrick car, he would win a lot more races than he won at Ganassi as well. So you can't really factor what Kurt Busch does in. But you can look at what Bubba Wallace does. Bubba Wallace has not significantly improved his performances from when he was in that Richard Petty car, and we know that Richard Petty car was down in funding. So is 2311 getting the exact same stuff that the other Toyota cars are getting? I don't know, but I just know they look like maybe a step behind the Gibbs cars. So I think Toyota would be wise to, include all that together. That being said, there are downsides to all of your teams sort of being on the same page, running very similar things, as you saw in this race at Atlanta when a lot of the Chevrolet teams cut down tires when they were leading the race. So that is a downside to it. When you're all together, you all run together. Also, when you're all together, everybody is going to run bad. So there is a downside to it. But I think overall, for the greater good, I think all of these manufacturers should take a look at what Chevrolet is doing and sort of emulate it. And the ironic thing is, this all started with Ford. Ford originally did this, and it seems like they've sort of backed away from their own sort of alliance practices, because you saw this started on the restrictor plate tracks when Ford started working together as a manufacturer and they brought everybody in a tighter alliance. Well, it seems like Chevrolet just went all the way and said, we're going to work with all of our cars on every single track. And I think Ford just needs to reassess what they were doing, because they actually had the idea first. They just need to expand it like Chevrolet has done, because I think going forward, if Chevrolet is going to keep doing this, it's going to be really hard to keep up with them if your manufacturer just doesn't go all in with all of the teams. Easier said than done. Obviously, there's only so many parts and pieces to go around, but that was just my take on it. And that's all I got for you today. If you like the content, feel free to subscribe down below. If you got a comment, leave it down in the comment section. I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. And other than that, thanks for your time. Peace.